in the small Austrian town of Amstetten, a horrifying secret lay buried beneath a quiet suburban home. On April 26, 2008, a woman named Elisabeth Fritzl stepped out of captivity for the first time in 24 years. Her story would soon shock the world, not only because she had been held prisoner, but because her captor was her own father, Joseph Fritzl. Born in 1966, Elisabeth was one of 7 children. Her father, Joseph, was a strict and controlling man with a dark past. Once inside, he drugged her and locked her behind a heavy, soundproof metal door. Joseph had spent years secretly constructing a hidden dungeon, a maze of narrow corridors, thick concrete walls, and multiple locked doors. He told her that Elisabeth had joined a cult and had left the babies on their doorstep. The neighbors and authorities believed him too. After all, Joseph was a retired engineer and a man of status. No one suspected the horrors beneath his home. She created lessons, games, and songs to distract them from their surroundings. Her resilience kept them alive, but time was running out and their health was rapidly declining. Over the years, Elisabeth gave birth to 7 children. He went on vacations, attended family gatherings, and worked on his garden, all while hiding the biggest crime in modern Austrian history. The courtroom was packed with reporters, psychologists, and horrified citizens. They were given new identities, therapy, and round-the-clock protection. It would take years for them to recover if full recovery was even possible. It forced governments to re-examine missing person laws, child protection services, and the blind trust given to authority figures. But above all, it reminded the world of the incredible strength of a woman who, in the darkest of conditions, never gave up on her children or on surviving. Kirsten eventually regained consciousness, and the family began adjusting to a life they had never known: freedom. For the basement-born children, the outside world was terrifying. The government promised reforms in missing persons protocols and child welfare systems. But for many Austrians, the horror was a permanent stain on their national conscience. Others feared that their grandfather might come back. Elisabeth, too, struggled with complex PTSD, diagnosed with a narcissistic personality disorder and sexual sadism. Joseph admitted that he always dreamed of creating his own world. They enrolled in private schools under different names, with personalized education plans and emotional support. Learning the truth shook their understanding of family, trust, and identity. They too entered therapy to process the deception and rebuild their bond with Elisabeth. Doctors monitored their development closely, helping them rebuild both their minds and bodies after decades of physical neglect. His need for control, domination, and secrecy drove him to build the dungeon and maintain the lie for 24 years. Yet despite the trauma, she remained focused on helping her children adapt and feel safe, often putting their needs ahead of her own. Her decision to speak out not only saved her children, but inspired countless survivors of abuse to come forward. Many saw her as a symbol of quiet strength, but she didn't seek the spotlight. She remained out of public view, focusing on healing her family in peace. Schools, hospitals, and police departments began training to recognize signs of hidden abuse. No signs of horror remain, but the scars live on. The Fritzl case is more than a crime story. It is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can exist in the most ordinary of places, and the courage it takes to escape it. The Fritzl case had forever changed the way the country viewed safety behind closed doors. The sun hurt their eyes. Trees, cars, crowds, everything was new and overwhelming. Why didn't Rosemary suspect anything? The media raised difficult questions about blind trust, family secrets, and how abusers can manipulate not only their victims, but entire communities. They had to relearn basic life skills: how to walk properly, how to speak in full sentences, how to process freedom. Joseph showed little remorse, only admitting guilt when shown irrefutable evidence. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in a high-security psychiatric facility, where he remains to this day. He controlled every aspect of Elisabeth's life. The basement had electricity, but it was cut off at his will. He rationed food, threatened violence, and manipulated his daughter with fear. At the hospital, Elisabeth found herself surrounded by people, lights, and questions. DNA tests confirmed he was the father of Elisabeth's 6 surviving children. The world watched in disbelief as the true extent of the horror came to light. With police present and her daughter's life on the line, she made a choice that changed everything. She told the truth. One died shortly after birth. Joseph incinerated the body in the furnace. 3 children were taken upstairs and raised by Joseph and his wife as abandoned babies. She collapsed with seizures and kidney failure. Joseph was forced to take her to the hospital, his first major slip. Doctors were puzzled by her condition, her pale skin, her underdeveloped teeth, and the fact she had no medical records. Authorities were notified and the investigation began. The other 3 remained with Elisabeth underground, knowing nothing of the outside world. Inside this prison, Elisabeth was forced to live in total darkness in a cramped, suffocating space with a makeshift bed, a sink, and a toilet. They had no windows, no fresh air, and no sunlight. They learned to speak only through Elisabeth's teachings and an old television. Their physical and mental health deteriorated. They developed vitamin deficiencies, poor posture, and had no concept of the world beyond their prison. He told his wife and the police that Elisabeth had joined a religious cult and cut ties with her family. Nobody questioned him deeply. He was seen as a respectable man in the community. Behind closed doors, he was abusive and manipulative. At age 18, Elisabeth tried to escape her toxic home, only to be caught and returned. From that moment, her father began planning her disappearance, but not in the way anyone could have imagined. On August 28, 1984, Joseph tricked Elisabeth into helping him carry a door down to the basement. What lay beneath the Fritzl home was not a typical basement. Within weeks, Joseph began raping his daughter. The abuse was constant and brutal. The children in the basement, Kirsten, Stefan, and Felix, lived in complete isolation. Upstairs, Rosemary Fritzl remained unaware or in denial. She accepted Joseph's explanations without much questioning. Joseph managed to maintain the dual life for over 2 decades. Despite the horror, Elisabeth never gave up hope. She raised her children as best she could, trying to give them a sense of normalcy in impossible conditions. Everything changed in April 2008 when Kirsten, now 19, fell dangerously ill. Under growing pressure, Joseph allowed Elisabeth and the remaining children to leave the cellar only temporarily, he claimed, to help explain Kirsten's illness. The story she revealed was beyond comprehension. Investigators raided the Fritzl home and discovered the dungeon, a cramped, damp underground space with tiny rooms and low ceilings. Joseph was arrested immediately. In March 2009, Joseph Fritzl faced trial for murder, rape, incest, enslavement, and coercion. After the rescue, Elisabeth and her children were taken to a secure location. The Fritzl case became a symbol of evil hiding in plain sight. The psychological impact on Elisabeth and her children was profound. Therapists described the children as severely traumatized. Some had panic attacks just hearing a door close. Meanwhile, the Austrian public was in shock. How could such an atrocity happen undetected? Why hadn't the police investigated more when Elisabeth disappeared? The Fritzl home soon became a scene of national disgrace. Crowds gathered outside, demanding it be torn down. Journalists from across the world arrived. Experts studied Joseph Fritzl's psychology to understand how such a man could exist. Elisabeth was praised worldwide for her bravery. The 3 basement children began a slow integration into society. The children raised upstairs faced their own struggles. Though they had grown up in the open, they had been lied to for years, told their mother had abandoned them. In the years that followed, Austria strengthened its laws against domestic abuse, improved psychological support systems, and increased scrutiny over missing person claims. Today, the cellar where Elisabeth suffered is permanently sealed, and the house was later sold and partially demolished.